Started with a spot. I noticed it in passing. Just a speck, really. Nothing to be too concerned about. At least that's what I told myself. But I knew. Deep down inside, I knew. In that moment, I denied it for weeks. But that seed of fear grew, multiplied, filled my body, and consumed my soul. Much like the leprosy. When I was a child, I would mock the lepers. If I snuck in close enough, I knew they'd be required to yell, "Unclean!" So I would make them yell again and again. I thought I was hilarious. I would say, "You're not half the man you used to be," knowing they couldn't run after me. But it wasn't funny anymore, because I was one of them. I hid it, though. I would only go out early in the mornings or late in the evenings, so the darkness would conceal my secret, and the freedom I had would be safe for one more moment. But finally, that dreadful day came. I was hungry and I needed bread. The shopkeeper screamed. I turned and I ran and I grabbed the bread. But I knew it was just a futile attempt at delaying the inevitable. In that moment, I knew I would die, abandoned and alone in the leper colony. My one comfort that I had was the thought that I would be united with people who understood me. Well, a family of sorts, bonded together in misery and bandages. But I failed to realize the depth of despair that is within the leper colony. I wasn't there 5 minutes before they attacked and robbed me of the little possessions I had, including the bread that cost me everything. I swore in that moment I would never be like them. But hunger is a relentless tormentor. And despair extinguishes honor. For the next 2 years, my body betrayed me. My family and my friends abandoned me. There was nothing to live for, but I kept living, fighting for survival, and not even knowing why. But then I heard about him, the healer, and he was coming to a nearby town. I broke every law by going, and I had nothing to give him, if in fact he would be willing to heal me. So I went. It was painful, mile after mile. And then I found him. I seen him. He caught my eye. Or should I say, he saw me. He turned and he began walking toward me. Toward me. Falling to the ground, I begged for healing, hoping against hope that he would be willing. Would he heal a poor, worthless, leprous beggar? Or would he leave me there to die?
The first time I met Jesus, well, one day I was a little tired, so I decided to go to bed early.
Mama,
What?
you had a raging fever and went to bed for 2 weeks. You were in and out of consciousness. You couldn't eat or drink. You talked about crazy things. One time you grabbed my arm and begged me to help you. You were at death's door, Mama. Death's door.
That's not how I remember
Of
things.
course not. You were delirious.
Well, you go ahead then and tell the story.
Well, Simon, that's my husband, was away.
Like he always was.
Why do you have to say it like that?
Because it's true. You know I love your Simon, but that boy sure does wander.
He was following Jesus. You know, the Messiah, the one you taught me to wait for my whole life.
What? He can't follow the Messiah and stop in every once in a while?
So my husband was away, and my mother started acting strangely. I knew something was wrong when she just sat down in the middle of Sabbath preparations and handed me the herbs. Everyone who knows my mama knows she never sits down, and she never lets anyone in her kitchen while she's creating, she likes to call it. Honestly, I was terrified I was going to lose you. You were so sick. I had tried every herb in the house, and there was no money for doctors. By the time Simon returned, I was nearly hysterical.
I wondered each time I closed my eyes if I would ever open them again. The end was very near.
I knew the path. I knew it well. It was well-traveled and led straight into the arms of another woman's husband. I usually walked the path under the cover of darkness, but that day was different. I knew his wife was away, and my husband said he was going to the temple again to make sacrifices for my sins. I was never good enough for him, never clean. Oh, how I hated him. So I walked the path in broad daylight. I knew it was brazen. I didn't care. I was just wanted to feel something, you know? Something that wasn't loneliness or humiliation or despair. So I walked the path. I knocked on the door and I went in. I didn't see them. I didn't see them following me, but they did. They knocked down the door. I clung to the sheets, but they dragged me out of the house. I saw the fire in their eyes, the hatred, the utter disgust. And my husband was one of them. There was so much yelling, I don't think they even heard my cries. They watched me fall. I fell on the path and no one helped me up. They jeered me as they dragged me down that path, the same evil path I had just walked half an hour before. My husband hadn't lied. He was going to the temple. He just didn't say that his friends were going to drag me there too, straight to the temple courtyard where they dropped me at the rabbi's feet like the filthy rag that I was. Then, silence. I lay on the ground, sobbing in that silence. My legs and feet were bleeding. My arms bruised, probably broken. I was covered in dirt and manure, and my very existence polluted the holiness of the temple. And the rabbi who stood before me, I wanted to die. And the stone in my husband's hands suggested I was about to get my wish.
But then Jesus.
It was Jesus who stood before me.
And in an instant, everything changed.
I didn't even know who he was.
I didn't know who he was.
I knew who he was, but I didn't truly understand why he was here.
This is Jesus, King of the Jews. Shall I crucify your king?
Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. It is finished.
It was Jesus.
Our precious Jesus.
Hanging on a Roman cross.
He was innocent.
He was dying
Instead of me.
I thought he was just a man with the gift of healing.
I thought he was just a rabbi with a kind heart.
But that day, on the road,
At the temple,
On my deathbed,
he took,
he took my hand. He raised me up.
And I looked in his eyes.
In his eyes was
something I didn't recognize.
I didn't understand it.
until the cross. It was love, that something in his eyes. It was love.
A love that covers a multitude of sins.
a love that healed my soul
Made me clean.
and suffered death that was rightfully mine.
A love that took what I was
And what I had become.
And paid for it.
For all of it, though none of it was his.
Love that went to a cross.
And submitted to death.
for me.
That day he met me on that road.
He saw death in my eyes.
And I saw life in his.
But the day he hung on that cross,
I saw death in his eyes.
And he put life in mine.
And then he died.
Instead of me.